Good evening, everyone. How was your week? Was it busy? Was it hard to get here? Some people are still stuck in traffic, so they will be coming late. I'd like to welcome you to our Capitol Memorial Church for the special program on cancer prevention. What a topic. How many of you know some people who have been diagnosed with cancer recently? Oh, all hands are up. And what about you who are online? Would you like to put in chat if you know someone who's been diagnosed with cancer recently? Yeah, we know, we just need this information, Dr. Emerson. We're so glad that you came to share your wisdom with us. What a blessing. Dr. Emerson is a board-certified physician in internal medicine, and cancer treatment and prevention is one of his specialties. So we're delighted to have Dr. Emerson here with us tonight. And over the weekend, he will be giving us 4 lectures total. So this is the first out of 4 lectures. If you like it, please come back tomorrow because the second one will be at 10 a.m. and then we'll continue in the afternoon. We have potluck tomorrow, so please come and join us for the whole service. Stay for potluck lunch, and then we'll continue in the afternoon at 2 p.m., and we have two lectures in the afternoon. So we're delighted to have Dr. Emerson with us, and we're grateful that he has studied the topic that has burdened so many, and he will also share the message with us in the light of biblical truth, because we believe that God created us without cancer, right? What happened? What went wrong that we get so much cancer nowadays? So we're just eager to hear all this information so that we can prevent cancer from happening to us and to our loved ones. So welcome to all of you who are still on your way, who are in traffic, and let's bow our heads for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we praise you for this Friday evening. We praise you for the coming Sabbath. We praise you that you are our Creator and our Redeemer. We praise you for how you created our body and for the knowledge that you have given us, how to stay healthy and how to take care of our body as the temple of the Holy Spirit. We ask that you may be here with us with your Holy Spirit. We ask for your wisdom for Dr. Emerson, who will be sharing his experience with us. We just ask that you may bless our time here together, that you may touch our hearts with the information, that we may feel equipped and we may feel how much you love us, that you designed us in such a great way and that you have given us some tools that we can use. And we praise you, Lord, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And with that, Dr. Emerson, please take it away.
I forgot, I need to get my computer. It's got the notes on it, so I'll be right back.
You see everything on the screen here. Dr. Emerson? Dr. Emerson, you can see everything on the screen here. Oh, the notes. I see. Yeah, that's important. Sometimes, you know, as speakers, we just need some prompts. New begin? Yeah, these are connect cards. If you'd like a special prayer, if you'd like to be in contact, if you'd like to be contacted about future events like this, please fill out the connect card. Thank you, New Begin. So we'll be beginning shortly, and tomorrow, the first lecture will be at 10 a.m. Then we have a worship service starting at 11:15. Then we have a potluck lunch. And then we'll start at 2 p.m. with the third lecture, and the fourth lecture is scheduled for 3:30. So I hope you will be able to join us for the whole program. And do you have your notes, Dr. Emerson? Are they working for you? Is everything looking good? Wonderful.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is really my passion to share topics like this. Cancer is on the rise. 1900 or so, only 1 in 40 people in their lifetime would get cancer. By the 1940s, it was 1 in 20. 1980s, 1 in 10. Now it's currently about 1 in 3, and we're heading towards 1 in 2. And so we'd like to know how to prevent it, and the things that we use to prevent it can also be used to help fight it. So tonight we're talking about phytochemicals and antioxidants. And these are chemicals in the food that help us fight cancers. And let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's I'm expecting it to change. Okay. So, our mothers have been telling us to eat our vegetables for years. And one of my favorite Quaker Oats ads shows the fellow, his 40 years ago, he's long beard, old guy, walks out with a cane, sits on a chair and says, "Some people ask me why I eat Quaker Oats." And he says, "Well, it makes me regular, and it lowers my cholesterol, and it gives me energy. But the real reason I eat Quaker Oats," and then you see this old lady walk out. She shuffles out. She puts her hand on his shoulder, and he says, "'Cause my mother tells me to." So now we know why our mothers are telling us to eat our vegetables. They are full of powerful phytochemicals. These are powerful chemicals which are found in plants only. Phyto comes from the word plant, and chemicals, of course, the chemicals found only in plants. Which ones have them? Actually, all plant foods have them. Vegetables, fruits, beans, grains, seeds, and nuts, and even herbs have them. They have thousands of phytochemicals, so we really can't put them in a supplement. We can't manufacture them. They're just too many. But these phytochemicals are not found in any animal products. Antioxidants are also found in plant foods, but they're not limited to just plant foods. Antioxidants can help prevent the formation of free radicals, and they can actually help repair molecules that have been damaged by free radicals. Free radicals are produced in our bodies. Things that we do can set the stage for conditions such as cancer, heart disease, premature aging, cataracts. In fact, they're known to play a role in numerous diseases. Certain lifestyle habits can increase the production of these free radicals, such as eating a high-fat diet, smoking, drinking alcohol can help generate free radicals, and the more extensive and rapid cell destruction from these free radicals. Now, because you can't avoid free radicals altogether, yes, you can avoid the high-fat foods, the smoking, the alcohol, but you're still going to produce free radicals, and that's where antioxidants come in. Now, let me go back one here. Okay. Free radicals, what it is the atoms there, like a complete shell of electrons. Free radicals don't have a complete shell of electrons. They're usually missing one, so they come up to a healthy atom or molecule and they take one from it. That oxidizes it and damages it. The antioxidants, however, have a complete shell of electrons plus one or two, and so it can come up to a damaged molecule and give it an electron that thereby reduces it back to a healthy state, or it can go up to a free radical and say, you know, you don't need to steal these electrons from these other molecules. Take one of mine, I have an extra one. And that's how you can get rid of free radicals. And that's what the antioxidants do. The richest sources of these natural chemical defenders are unrefined plant foods, whether fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts. Study after study continues to confirm the protective benefits of the plant foods. How much is the average person benefiting from them? Actually, not nearly enough. Around the world, people are eating less of these protective plant foods and experiencing more degenerative diseases. As I mentioned earlier, lifetime risk of cancer is increasing. 1900 started at 1 in 40 people got it in their lifetimes. And then in 1945, 1 in 20. 1980, it was 1 in 10. Now it's about 1 in 3. A survey of the American eating habits show only 1 in 11 Americans succeeded in reaching the minimum goal of at least 3 servings of vegetables per day and 2 servings of fruit per day. That's not much, but only 11% of the population were getting those. 20% are eating fruit and vegetables rich in carotenoids. These are the antioxidants. These are found mostly in the yellow, orange vegetables, also in the dark green leafy vegetables, and fruits such as cantaloupe have them. Only 18% are eating the vegetables from the cabbage family, like cauliflower, cabbage, and broccoli. 59% are eating fruit on a regular basis. Now, why such a high percentage eating fruit? Well, it's sweet, okay? So we enjoy it more than the vegetables. Only 28% eat fruit or vegetables rich in vitamin C, and only 16% eat whole grain foods like bread, cereals made with brown rice and whole wheat. Now, what are the benefits that we can expect by eating more of these fruits and vegetables? Well, quite a few. Our body can actually repair and prevent disease, but it can also repair the damage done by disease if we'll give it the nutrients that it needs. There are some older studies that show a drop in risk of cancer. Some of them show as much as 50%. Worldwide, cancer has been one of the greatest thieves of personal health and happiness, yet 200 major studies have shown over the past about 100 years consistently shows that those that eat largely of plant foods are about half as likely to experience cancer as those who eat few plant foods. Eating the plant foods can cut your risk of cancer dramatically. Not only does it decrease the risk of cancer, but heart disease is predictably reversed on a total vegan, oil-free diet. Orne showed that in 1990. Diabetes, we regularly help people get off their diabetic medications as type 2 diabetes on a plant-based diet. High blood pressure comes down usually in about 2 weeks. Usually within that time period, we have to start tapering people off their medicine if they're on a total plant-based diet without the free oils. Which of the fruits and vegetables contain the most powerful fighting properties? Well, they probably all do. Some appear to have greater protection than others, and that may be because they've been studied more or because they get more press. For example, soybeans and their products such as tofu, soy milk are packed full of phytochemicals. And studies suggest that it decreases risk of breast, colon, rectal, stomach, and lung cancers. Some believe that soy products can promote cancers. Now, the question is, why would they believe that? The question comes because soy and soy foods contain compounds called phytoestrogens. Women that have high estrogen levels are at increased risk for breast cancers. And so it's thought that, well, soybeans, they have phytoestrogens, so wouldn't that put them at increased risk for breast cancer? Actually, no. The reason is that the phytoestrogens, when they bind to an estrogen receptor, they only stimulate it at 2% the normal activity. And they prevent a real estrogen from binding to that receptor and stimulating it at 100% activity. So it actually decreases your estrogenic stimulation just by competitive inhibition. It prevents the real estrogen from binding to that receptor. By the way, I should mention, maybe 40 years ago, women in America had 50% higher estrogen levels than women in China. And the question was why? And they noted that because of this difference, women in America started menses usually around 12 and ended in their 50s. Women in China started around 18, ended in their 40s because of the lower estrogen levels. The reason is because when your body gets rid of estrogen, the way it does it is estrogen binds to a glutathione and it gets bound to that estrogen, and the liver then dumps it into the intestines, and the estrogen normally would get reabsorbed into the bloodstream, but because it's bound to this glutathione, it can't get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, so it gets carried out in the stool. In America, where we have a high-fat diet, that fat feeds a certain bacteria which colonizes and grows, and that bacteria can actually debind the estrogen from the glutathione, and thereby allows it to be reabsorbed. And that's why people on a high-fat diet women have 50% higher estrogen levels than women that are on the very low-fat diet. Now, that was true 40 years ago. We went to China, did some speaking out there, a couple years ago, and their diet is pretty much like ours now. I mean, they've adopted the Western lifestyle, so I don't think that holds for them anymore. Now, because phytoestrogens do have 2% stimulation, they can help with postmenopausal symptoms because they can stimulate estrogen at a low level and help get rid of postmenopausal symptoms. They can ease those effects. Now, if they can also help with premenstrual syndrome because they can lower the estrogen stimulation, which occurs just prior to menses in some women. And so these soy products can actually be helpful. Now, phytochemicals are found in whole grains such as wheat, rice, oats, and they've been shown to reduce the risk of crude killers in the world. It's cancer and cardiovascular disease, including heart attacks and strokes. These protective chemicals, they're found in the bran and in the germ. When you take the bran and the germ away, you lose about 99% of the phytochemicals and antioxidants. Now, 40 years ago, when the kids were starving in China, I thought, well, why are they bothering to polish the rice and take the bran and the germ out? I mean, that's more work. Wouldn't it be simpler just to sell the whole grain? Why are they polishing it? Well, the reason is that the germ has essential fats in it, and it's got fat-soluble vitamins in it, and those fats can get rancid. They can oxidize and become rancid. And so if you leave the germ on the rice, you shorten the shelf life. It can go rancid. If you polish it, shelf life is extended dramatically. Unfortunately, it may not extend your life, but it does extend the shelf life. The other thing in America, if I sell you refined grains, refined wheat, where we take out the grain, the bran and the germ, I can then say, oh, by the way, you're not getting enough bran, so I can sell you wheat bran. And I can also say you're not getting enough germ, so I can sell you wheat germ. I can sell you the same grain 3 times over. And that's the American way. If you get the whole grain, you just have to buy it once. So now most scientists believe that the best strategy for improved health and lowered risk of disease is to eat a variety of fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, instead of isolating certain ones. What about supplements? There are problems with supplements. Number one, it's estimated that one tomato has 10,000 different phytochemicals in it. We cannot manufacture 10,000 phytochemicals and put them in a supplement. In addition, high doses of supplements can actually turn into free radicals themselves at higher doses. Besides this, most nutritionists agree that you cannot get the same benefit from supplements as you can from the whole grains or the whole foods. Case in point, there's an example of a supplement not being equivalent to a whole food. It was shown that populations that have diets rich in the yellow, orange vegetables that are rich in beta-carotene had lower cancer rates, much lower. And the pharmaceutical industry thought it must be the beta-carotene. So they said, why don't we make beta-carotene in a supplement and sell it to smokers to decrease their risk of lung cancer? I thought, well, why don't they just help smokers stop smoking? That'd be another approach. But anyway, that's what they wanted to do. Well, the FDA said, before you can market it as a cancer preventative, you have to have some evidence that it actually works. So they did a study. The finished study was supposed to go 10 years. Smokers would come in, they'd flip a coin, heads you get beta-carotene, tails you get a placebo, and then they watched to see the incidence of cancer. They had to stop the study after 8 years. They couldn't go the whole 10 years because those getting the beta-carotene, it was clear, were getting more cancers than the ones that were getting the placebo. Well, a second study was done, the carrot study. It was also supposed to run 10 years, but they had to stop after only 4 years. They found the same thing. Those getting the beta-carotene were getting the cancers. Those that weren't taking the beta-carotene had a decreased risk of the cancers. So taking a supplement of beta-carotene is not equivalent to eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, says Richard Klausner, is former director of the National Cancer Institute. The studies demonstrate how hard it is to isolate a single component of a healthful diet as a beneficial element. Diet is extremely complex, involving hundreds of compounds in combination. And this is illustrated, you know, if our church is putting on a concert and I get a trumpet piece I'm supposed to play, I take it at home, it's not the melody line, it sounds horrible, it's not the melody line. But when I play with the other instruments, it sounds beautiful. And that's what beta-carotene does. If you take it in its natural form, you have flavonoids with the beta-carotene, and they increase the reducing capacity of the antioxidants 20 to 50-fold. But you don't get that in the supplement. These are a list of the top 10 best antioxidant fruits and vegetables. They include, on the fruit sides, strawberries, plums, oranges, red grapes, kiwi, grapefruit, white grapes, banana, red bell peppers, excuse me, it should be corrected, apples, tomatoes, and the vegetables we have garlic, kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts, alfalfa, broccoli, beets, peppers, onions, and corn. And another benefit of the antioxidants, we just had a patient yesterday with a cholesterol problem, and give you some history. Back right after World War II, they were wondering what puts a person at risk for heart attacks. And at the Framingham study was done, they looked at everybody in the town of Framingham. They did histories and physicals, lab tests, and then they followed them to see what they died of or what they got sick from. And they found that your sodium level had nothing to do with whether you got a heart attack or not, but your cholesterol level did. Higher the cholesterol, higher the risk. Then later on, years down the road, they found it wasn't the total cholesterol, it was mainly the LDL cholesterol that was the problem. There was some good cholesterol, HDL, which actually lowered your risk. So they put LDL as, that's a risk factor. In the last several years, they've now found that it's not really the LDL, it's the oxidized LDL. That's the problem. So if you are wanting to screen for risk of, say, heart disease, the standard lipid profile doesn't contain oxidized LDL, but you can ask your physician to order it. It's not an expensive test, I don't know, $20 maybe. LabCorp, Quest, they do them. And if it's high, it puts you at risk. And the way to lower it, of course, is to avoid things that would cause you to generate cholesterol, the high fat, saturated fatty foods, and also taking the antioxidants to prevent the cholesterol you have from getting oxidized. So a patient I saw yesterday, she had actually a fairly low LDL, but the oxidized portion was very high. It put her at increased risk. So started her on some antioxidants. What about raw foods? In general, cooked or processed foods contain fewer phytochemicals. They get changed. They have fewer antioxidants than the fresh or uncooked foods. Broccoli, other cruciferous vegetables such as kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, radishes, cauliflower are the best sources of the powerful anti-cancer nutrient sulforaphane. Human tests show the absorption of this compound was 10 times higher in uncooked broccoli compared to cooked broccoli. However, if you have to boil your broccoli, boiling will leach the nutrients into the water, so be sure you drink the water. Or simpler, just steam them. That can help preserve the chemicals in the plant. Garlic, what about garlic? Raw garlic may be healthier due to an enzyme called allinase, which produces a DNA-protecting compound called allicin when chewed in your mouth, but when cooked, you absorb little or none of this product. Okay, so let's look specifically, at fruits and vegetables. Do they really decrease your risk of cancer? To answer this, they did a meta-analysis. They looked at 95 prospective studies, and they looked at heart disease, cancer, and all-cause mortality. They found that for all-cause mortality, that is death from any cause, those eating at least 7.5 servings of fruits, it dropped their risk of all-cause mortality by 19%. For those eating vegetables, they had a 25% drop if they ate 7.5 servings a day. And the first 20% in the drop came with only 2 to 3 servings a day. For those eating, back up. The blue graph is for fruits, the green graph is for vegetables, and the combined fruits and vegetables, if you had 10 servings of fruits and vegetables combined, it dropped it by 31%. Now notice here, vegetables seem to have a stronger effect than the fruits. Look at this later. Now, what about cancer? Now that was for all-cause mortality. Those eating 7 to 7.5 servings of fruits had a 14% drop in cancer incidence compared to those eating, say, less than half of a serving a day. So 7.5 servings a day versus half a serving a day dropped at 14%. That's for fruits The challenge with this was trying to look at cancer mortality. Overall, there was a 14% drop, fruits and vegetables combined. Then they wanted to find out, well, was it the fruits or the vegetables that decreased the risk of cancer the most? And in the meta-analysis, the trouble is they didn't define fruits and vegetables the same in each study. In fact, in one study, they included fruits in the vegetable column. And I actually emailed the author, and he expressed that problem. So what we look at instead was a study looking at just a single study looking at 66,000 people in England. And they did a simple questionnaire. They said, what was your move forward here. What did you eat in the last 24 hours? Those aged 35 and over were included in the study. And they were followed then for 7 years. And based on that 24-hour recall of what they ate, this is what they found in terms of all-cause mortality. Sorry, I'm having trouble keeping these in sync. Okay, 7.5 servings of fruits each day dropped their all-cause mortality by 19%. If they had 7.5 servings of vegetables a day, it dropped their risk by 25%. And if they had missing. I'll just have to explain it to you. Sorry, the slides aren't synced. What they looked at was fruits and vegetables combined dropped the cancer mortality over the next 7 years about 31%. So they said, okay, cancer mortality drops if you have about 7 servings of fruits and vegetables combined. So they said, well, is it the fruits or is it the vegetables? When they looked at fruits, the mortality dropped about 7% when they went from half a serving a day to 7 servings a day. After that, they looked then, well, let's look at vegetables. Well, that 7%, for fruits was not statistically significant. When they looked at vegetables, it dropped it by about 24%, and that was statistically significant. And so they confirmed what the previous meta-analysis showed, that vegetables had a much greater effect in all-cause mortality as well as cancer mortality than fruits. And this may be why in Genesis, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but before the sin entered into the world, the diet consisted of fruits and seeds. You don't have to kill a plant to eat the fruits or the seeds. That includes the nuts, the grains, the legumes. After sin, God added the herbs of the fields. That's leaves, stems, roots. I thought, well, why did he add those? I mean, what was the point? And then it occurred to me, after studies like this, that before sin, man had dominion over the lions and tigers and bears. He didn't have to worry about them. And he also had dominion over bacteria, parasites, viruses. After sin, God realized he didn't have dominion over bacteria, parasites, viruses. He would need an immune system to help fight and resist those attacks. And that's why God, I believe, gave him the vegetables, something he wouldn't have needed in a sinless world. And we're finding that vegetables, as we've seen here, can decrease the risk of getting cancers and cancer mortality. And as we mentioned, why are the vegetables so helpful? Well, they have the phytochemicals, and they also have the antioxidants. So the question then is, if vegetables can decrease your risk of cancer mortality, of getting cancer, what about giving vegetables to someone who already has cancer? And that's exactly what one doctor has done for, well, him and his clinic after he passed away has done for maybe the last 100 years. They've been giving to cancer patients the phytochemicals found in 17 to 20 pounds of vegetables per day. Now, if you have cancer and you come to me and I say, here's 20 pounds of vegetables, eat this today and then eat another 20 pounds, it's more than you could eat. So they got around it by doing pressed juices. And when you do the pressed juices, you can get the equivalent of 20 pounds of vegetables per day in the form of juices, plus 3 meals a day. That was what Dr. Gerson and Gerson's clinic has been doing for the last 80 years. And so I want to take you just on a journey of Dr. Gerson's discoveries with vegetables and vegetable juices in helping fight cancers. Who was he? Well, he was born in Wangrons, Germany, 1881. He was, at age 6.5, he thought he could help his mother's flowers, so he started experimenting with fertilizers. Unfortunately, all the flowers died, and support for his research quickly dried up. However, at the end of high school, he took the country's math test, and it was a very difficult problem he saw in the math test, and he proceeded to set up an equation, complicated equation, and found a solution to the problem. His math professor at the university, or at the high school, couldn't determine if the answer was right or wrong, and so he sent it to the math professor at the University of Berlin, and the response was that he had produced an entirely new and original solution, that he should absolutely study mathematics. However, upon graduation, his family thought he would have a better future if he studied medicine. So he went to the University of Germany for his medical degree. As a medical student and an intern, he started experimenting with dietary treatment for curing migraines and later other diseases. He completed his internship in 1907. During World War I, he was captain in the German Army Medical Corps. 1928, 10 years after establishing his own practice in Germany, Dr. Gerson treated 3 hopelessly ill people suffering with cancer through the dietary means he'd been developing. 1933, he barely escaped capture and imprisonment in a Nazi death camp for being Jewish. He moved his family to Vienna, Austria, where he completed a book on tuberculosis. 1938, he moved his family to the United States. He passed the New York State Board, opened a medical practice on Park Avenue. He continued to develop his dietary therapy and obtained success in many types of serious health difficulties, especially cancer. He treated hundreds of patients given up to die after receiving surgery and radiation. Chemotherapy hadn't been invented yet. After years of study and research, the Gerson's therapy brought really sick people up to about a 50% recovery rate. If they had had chemotherapy prior to starting that process, the recovery rate was down to about 40%. 1946, he was the first physician to demonstrate recovered cancer patients to the United States Senate Committee. They were holding a hearing on a bill to find means of curing and preventing cancer under the sponsorship of Senator Claude Pepper. The AMA, however, lobbied against it, and the bill was defeated by about 4 votes. But if it had passed, research could have been funded to study this approach more thoroughly. How did he become interested in dietary approach to disease? As an undergraduate university student, he was plagued with severe migraine headaches. Later, as medical resident, sometimes spent 3 days a week in a darkened room, experiencing nausea, vomiting, splitting one-sided headaches. He'd have to sit in a dark room 2 to 3 days a week. His professors said, learn to live with it. They really didn't have anything to offer. But after searching the literature, he came across an Italian medical journal of a woman who found relief of her migraines by changing her diet. No details were given as to the diet, and so he said, well, I need to experiment with dietary changes. He thought there may be a food that I can't digest that may be causing the migraines. So he said, well, even babies can digest milk. So he tried cow's milk for 10 days, all kinds of dairy products. But at the end of 10 days, no relief of his migraines. Then it occurred to him that animals never drink milk after weaning. He also noted that the human digestive tract was very similar to vegetarian animals. Humans, it's about 30 feet long, and that's similar to what it is in vegetarian animals, long, small intestine. However, the small intestine in carnivores is maybe 10 feet long, much shorter. It's to get the food in and out before it becomes rancid and decays. So he thought, well, if our digestive tract matches vegetarian animals, maybe we should be vegetarians. So he tried an all-apple diet for the next 10 days. Raw, baked apples, applesauce, apple juice, apple compote. His migraines resolved. He then slowly added other food items. If he wasn't tolerant to one of the foods, he would get a migraine in as little as 20 minutes. He found that cooked foods containing, cooked foods, if they had a high salt content, they could cause his headaches as well. So he found that as long as he stayed on this plant-based diet, the migraines did not come. So he started treating other patients with migraines with the same fruits and vegetables, some raw, some cooked. And the patient's migraines resolved. Then one of Gerson's patients came to him and said, my migraines went away, but my skin tuberculosis went away also. And he said, really? You must not have had skin TB because it doesn't get better. We don't know how to treat that. And then the patient showed him the documentation that, yes, it was skin tuberculosis. And so for the first time, he'd seen a cure for skin tuberculosis. And he said, well, do you know anyone else with skin TB? He says, oh yeah, down at the TB clinic I go to. He says, well, send them my way. So they came to see Gerson. He put them on the diet, and they were getting well as well. Then Dr. Ferdinand Sauerbach, world-famous lung tuberculosis specialist, practiced in Munich. He heard about Gerson's success with skin tuberculosis. So after long discussions with Gerson, they treated 450 incurable skin TB patients with Gerson's method. 446 out of 450, that's 99% success rate, they fully recovered. He also found that this form of therapy worked for TB of the lungs, the kidneys, and the bone. Albert Schweitzer's wife, Helene, she contracted pulmonary tuberculosis in the tropics, was in terminal condition when brought to Max Gerson. She recovered and went on to live well into her 80s. Dr. Schweitzer thought very highly of Max Gerson. These are some of the other diseases he found responded to his program. And we currently see consistent response to hypertension and atherosclerosis, and they have documentation for reversal of heart disease with Ornish's study in 1990. Albert Schweitzer wrote of him, he said, I see in him one of the most eminent geniuses in the history of medicine. Many of his basic ideas have been adopted without having his name connected with them. Yet he's achieved more than seemed possible under adverse conditions. He leaves a legacy which commands attention and which will assure him his due place. Those whom he has cured will now attest the truth of his ideas. His Royal Highness Charles, Prince of Wales, now King of England, said, I know of one patient who turned to Gerson therapy after having been told she was suffering from terminal cancer and would not survive another course of chemotherapy. Happily, 7 years later, she's alive and well, so it's vital that rather than dismissing such experiences, we should further investigate the beneficial nature of these treatments. Are there any studies demonstrating the efficacy of Gerson's approach? This is a 5-year study. They just looked at the typical survival rates for people with malignant melanoma, which is a particularly lethal cancer. And if you just, in summary, if you look at stage 4, that's where the cancer spread throughout the whole body. 5-year survival with standard treatment was just 6%, but with Gerson's therapy, it rose to 39%. Now, granted, this was not a randomized controlled prospective study, but it was just basically looking at the people that were treated with Gerson's approach versus standard medical approach. He also believed getting foods that were grown with all 52 minerals that the plants need and also humans need would also be beneficial. So the key to Gerson's therapy is to flood the body with nutrients found in the vegetables to detoxify and also to detoxify the body. The goal is to provide the phytochemicals found in 17 to 20 pounds of vegetables a day. Problem is, again, you can't eat that volume. So to accomplish this, they typically did juicing, as much as 1 cup of fresh pressed juice every hour throughout the day, total about 3 quarts a day, plus 3 meals a day. Another pillar of Gerson's therapy is detoxification. After the body's immune system is strengthened, it can start killing cancer cells. If the cancer cells die off too quickly, they can release their toxins into the body. And you can get a healing reaction, as they call it. You can feel nauseated, low-grade fevers, muscle aches and pains. And so they stimulate your detoxification process. How do they do it? Well, you have two ways of getting rid of toxins. One is through your kidneys. Just drinking fluids, all the juices you drink will flush toxins through the kidneys. The kidneys can take toxins out and put it in the urine and get rid of it that way. But the other means of detoxification is through the liver. And we don't have time to go through the physiology of that, but when you do a coffee enema, the coffee is taken to the liver, and the liver says, this is toxic, and it revs up its detoxifying mechanism. The blood vessels going from the intestines to the liver are dilated to increase blood flow there. The bile ducts, which send the toxins in the bile from the liver to the gallbladder, are dilated, so it increases the flow of the bile. And as I mentioned earlier, binding the toxin to glutathione so that it's not reabsorbed once it gets in the gut, that happens 6.5 times faster with a coffee enema. It turns out that coffee is a toxin, and that's why it stimulates the liver to do this. By the way, the tea growers know this about caffeine. They realize that tea plants, they have leaves, and those tea leaves produce caffeine. And the reason they produce caffeine is because they're toxic to animals. So if an animal comes up and eats a tea leaf, the tea leaf senses it's being eaten. So it starts to say, I'm being eaten, I better produce more caffeine. Produces more caffeine, those go into the leaves, and the next day when the animal comes back, he says, yuck, there's too much caffeine in this tea leaf, I'll go find another plant. Now the tea growers know this, and so the day before they harvest the tea plants, they go through the rows of tea plants and they beat them with sticks. That way the tea plant thinks it's being eaten, produces more caffeine, and the next day they harvest the leaves and they get more caffeine in their tea leaves that way. So, at any rate, coffee enemas are useful for people that are toxic and need to rev up their detoxifying mechanism. We don't do that unless they have a high tumor load and it appears evident that the tumors are breaking down quickly. We don't do it for people that aren't toxic because there are bad side effects. Ellen White talks about the harmful effects of caffeine. However, she also notes that she did use caffeine twice in her life for nausea and vomiting. So, you know, if nausea and vomiting is justification, if the benefits outweigh the risks in coffee for nausea and vomiting, you know, if we've got someone who's toxic from stage 4 cancer, we found that it is very helpful, and it does relieve their symptoms. We had, the first time we used it was with a patient who was jaundiced. He had a pancreatic cancer. It shut off the bile duct going to the gallbladder, or from the gallbladder, and bile backed up. His eyes were like neon yellow. And first time we tried a coffee enema, within an hour, the jaundice was gone. In 3 hours, it came back, gave him another enema, went away again. 3 hours, it came back. At Gerson's approach, they usually give coffee enemas for toxic patients about every 4 hours. And the patients sometimes ask for it every 2 hours because they feel so much better from it. It can decrease pain and toxic symptoms. However, again, I only use it for patients that are toxic. We also try to increase the metabolic rate. Emerson might do that with levothyroxine. When you increase your metabolic rate through your thyroid hormone, or through exercise, or through getting enough sleep, or decreasing your stress, all those ways have been shown to increase your metabolic rate. You can help fight cancers, and you can decrease the risk of cancers. If the metabolic rate, if we find that it is low, we can start patients on levothyroxine. However, exercise is a simple, non-prescription way of doing it as well. They have shown that women who have survived breast cancer, their risk of recurrent breast cancer is cut by about 50% if they're simply exercising. Dramatic drop in cancer recurrence. Okay, so we want to look at juicing. Most alternative approaches to cancer actually use juicing, some form of juicing. They typically won't tell you where they got it from, but they really are adaptations of Gerson's program. I wish they would maybe tell where it came from, because it could add credence or credibility to what they're doing. But this is the protocol that we use at Heartland. By the way, I should share with you that we do help people make transitions who are to a healthy lifestyle and to complementary approaches to cancer support at Heartland. It's a 17-day program. People go there and we train them how to do plant-based diet. We train them how to do the juicing, which we're talking about here. We also show them how to do fever therapy, which we'll be talking about tomorrow. Talk about how fevers turn on your immune system to help you fight cancers. And we also start them on intravenous vitamin C, which is a whole other topic, but which has been shown to extend the lifespan of terminal cancer patients dramatically. But that's the protocol we use there. We also have our clinic near Hagerstown, Maryland. We do 3-day intensives there where people come. If they want to learn how to support someone with cancer, they'll usually come with the cancer patient, and we train them how to do hydrotherapy. The helper will watch my wife do one first, then the second day they help my wife do one, and the third day they do the fever therapy for the patient, and she just coaches them if they need any help. And it's a shorter period, but it can be helpful. At any rate, there's information, little brochures about Heartland's program, which you can pick up after the talk here. So, juicing. If you'd like to do juicing, either you're trying to fight cancer or you're trying to prevent cancer, there are different types of juicers. At a lifestyle center, we don't use wheatgrass juice not because it's not effective. It's probably just as effective as any green juice. The problem is about half the patients that try wheatgrass get nauseated. Some will actually vomit. And so we like green juices that everybody can tolerate. And so we tend to avoid those. Citrus juicers, as we mentioned, the fruits only had a 7% decrease in cancer mortality over the next 7 years, and it wasn't statistically significant. But vegetables, dramatic drop, 24% drop in cancer mortality over the next 7 years. So we use the vegetable juices, not the citrus juices. There's nothing wrong with citrus juice. It's just if you're trying to prevent cancer, the vegetables is where to focus. Blenders. People say, well, I've got a Vitamix. Let me just use that. And you say, well, you can do that. The problem is the Vitamix will include the fiber. And fiber is a wonderful thing, but it increases the volume. And if you're trying to get 20 pounds of vegetables in a day, that's too much volume. And so the pressed juice separates the phytochemicals from the fiber so that you can get more phytochemicals in each day. Centrifugal juicer. Okay, how does that work? A centrifugal juicer shreds the vegetables and then it spins them. And it spins them, centrifugal force pushes them against a screen. That pushing against the screen kind of squeezes it and pushes the juice through the screen, but the pulp stays on this side of the screen and goes out one chute, the juice comes out the other chute. And that's a step in the right direction. It will give you some juice, but it's not a high quality juice, and I'll explain that here shortly. Masticating juicers are a step in the right direction. Instead of using centrifugal force to push the fiber against the screen, it uses a screw, and the screw grinds up the vegetables, like the carrots, and then that screw pushes them physically against the screen and pushes the juice through the screen. Juice comes out one side, pulp comes out another. It's a fairly simple process. but again, it's not the optimal quality of juice. Twin gear is pretty similar to the masticating. The ideal juicer, if you're fighting cancers, is a two-step operation. You use a grinder or a titerator, which grinds the carrots up. That's step one. You get a juicy pulp from this. You then put that in a drill cloth, fold it in thirds this way and this way, and you put it in a hand press or hydraulic press, and it presses the juice through that drill cloth. Drill cloth is kind of like Levi. It's kind of a canvas material. If you go to Joann's, ask them for drill cloth, they'll know what you're talking about, and they can show you how to get some. The benefit actually was illustrated to us. We used a centrifugal juicer for a while at home just for our own juicing, and we would take the pulp that was left over and we would feed it to our alpacas, and they loved it. When we switched to pressed juice and we took the pulp from that and fed it to the alpacas, they wouldn't eat it because there was no juice left in the pulp, and that was because the pressed juice, you get more juice out. The Norwalk juicer actually was what made Gerson therapy possible. It was invented around 1934, and that's what enabled people to start doing pressed juices. If you see here, you put your carrots in, they grind up here, and they come out a juicy pulp here. You catch the juicy pulp and you put it in a drill cloth, fold it in thirds one way, fold it in thirds the other way, and then you put it in this press. You flip a lever here, and that hydraulic press presses the juice, and the juice runs out here. It's a pretty simple process. However, these are expensive. They run about $2,500 or $2,800 new. You can get used ones on eBay. Why do we use pressed juices? Several reasons. One, you get 35% more juice per pound of carrots than compared with a centrifugal juicer. So you get more juice, but that's not the real reason you use them. The juice doesn't separate out. When you set centrifugal juice on a shelf, the sediment settles out and the fluid on top is clear. See through it. Pressed juice, you set on the shelf, some of the sediment settles out, but it's opaque. You can't see through it. There's a qualitative difference. Another issue is when you taste the juice from a centrifugal juicer, it tastes nice, but when you taste the pressed juice, it has a fuller, richer body. But the real reason I use pressed juice, we talked to girls, I even take their courses, call them up. I said, why don't you use centrifugal juicers? It's a lot easier, a lot simpler. They said, well, we have a lot of cancer patients that try the centrifugal juicer and they don't respond, and when they shift to the pressed juice, they start responding. And because of that, the lifestyle centers that we've worked at, we had to switch from the centrifugal juicers to the pressed juicers just because we wanted a response, an optimal response. Other diseases, autoimmune diseases, could be treated with centrifugal juicers, but if for cancer, you really want to be optimal. This is a study they did. Comparing the three juicers. Here, this is with the centrifugal juicer. B is with the masticating juicer, and C is with the Norwalk juicer. And just take, for instance, the amount of potassium gotten per, I don't know, it might have been a pound of carrots. Potassium with the centrifugal juicer, you got 8. With the pressed juice, masticating juicer, it doubled it. It went up to 16. And with the pressed juice, the Norwalk, you doubled it again. It went up to about 32. So you're getting more minerals and vitamins, and we presume that the phytochemicals follow the same pattern. You're getting something with pressed juice that you're not getting with the centrifugal or the masticating juices. So the Norwalk, they went out of business. since October 2021. And the pure juicer has taken its place. And they run about the same price. They're now running around $2,800. But you can get used Norwalks if you would like. However, is there a less expensive solution? Yes. This is the Wells Juice Press. And the way it works is it's the same way that the Norwalk works. It's just done by hand. You take your carrots and your apples here. You put them through the Champion juicer. Normally, the Champion juicer, it's kind of like a masticating juicer. It shreds the pulp here and usually puts the pulp out here, and the juice comes through a screen here. But when you're doing it for press juicing, you put a plate here so that none of the juice comes out here. All the juice and the pulp comes out here. You catch that in the same drill cloth that you use for the Norwalk. You fold it in thirds one way, fold it in thirds the other way, and then you put it in this hand press. You put that packet there, and it's a car jack. You just jack it up by hand, and it presses the juice, and it comes out here, and you get your juice. And the total, I don't know, for maybe 600, actually, I found a place, if you check the website, I found one for 250. It's a lot cheaper. I mean, so for about $600, you can get something that is equivalent to the Pure Juicer or Norwalk Juicer. And I share with patients, they say, hey, if you're running a lifestyle center, get the Pure Juicer. But if you're just doing it for yourself at home, this works just great. It's just fine. These are some tips. We've kind of done an adaptation of Gerson's approach. We usually he did about 1 cup every hour. We do about 1 pint every 2 hours for a total of about 1.5 liters. And then in the afternoon, we do some herbal teas. Easy-Act tea has a long track record of being helpful for cancer patients. So we usually mix the juice up in the morning. Juice can oxidize, and it can happen fairly quickly. And so we put it in a pint canning jar, fill it up to the brim, put the lid on so that there's no air in it. You might have some overflow to the top, put this lid on it, put it in the refrigerator, and there's controversy about this. Gerson recommends drinking it immediately. Others say it'll last 3 or 4 days. We usually want it consumed within maybe 24 hours or so. Question, how soon does your food oxidize? Well, it can happen fairly quickly. If you make guacamole with avocado, you leave it in a bowl, what does it do? Turns brown. How long? What, half an hour, a couple hours? It's fairly quick. So if you take the carrots and you mix it with an apple per pound of carrots, if you get Granny Smith apples that are very tart, acidic, that can help as an antioxidant and help preserve the carrot juice, and it usually makes it taste better as well. If you're doing the green juices, you can also add an apple to the greens. And okay. In the beginning, God advised man as to which foods were designed to keep our bodies the best of health. And God said, behold, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the land, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. God's original plant-based diet is still the best. More than 6,000 years later, science is proving it, and common sense tells us it is so. Okay. Well, thank you for listening. Tomorrow, we're going to look at fevers and how fevers turn on your immune system. to help you fight infections. That's at 10. And then in the afternoon, we'll look at how fevers not only help you fight infections, they can help you fight cancers. And we'll look at the evidence for that. And then also we'll talk about how to stay on a healthy lifestyle program, how to double your compliance. We'll show you a key that has actually been shown in a study, a medical study that works. So hope to see you there. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Emerson, for the extraordinary lecture,
Yeah.
for the wealth of information. And let's take a few questions. Do we have any questions for Dr. Emerson?
A few different things. One, washing the vegetables.
I'm sorry, what?
Washing the vegetables.
Washing them.
Yes. So basically, you suggest organic, but washing the vegetables. Should the vegetables
be
cleaned,
washed?
or the fruit, or for apples, put the whole apple in. Some people say take the skin off.
Yeah. I usually leave the skin on. My wife likes to peel them, but you do get B12 in the dirt on the carrots and things, so
That's easier.
you don't want to be too clean. I don't know that it's a real issue. Organic is ideal, but it doesn't have to be. If people can't afford organic, don't stop juicing just because you can't get organic. The benefit far outweighs the risk of that. And you can, if you want to wash them with a brush or something, usually if you get them at Walmart, they're pretty clean anyway.
Okay.
We have found that organic carrots can be really fairly inexpensive. You buy a whole bunch of them. So, we just, if we grow them ourselves and pull them out, we just rinse them off with water, brush them with a little brush, and I just put them in whole that way.
Okay. I have two more questions.
It's all right. You have another question?
Okay. One other. Is there a solution if we're not making the juice at home, where to buy already made?
Yeah. If you go to Walmart in the produce section, Bolthouse Farms makes a pressed juice.
Okay.
They don't tell you how it makes it, but I can taste it and tell you it's pressed juice. It's just
Okay.
got that full, rich body. There's controversy as to oxidized. Ideally, you don't want it oxidized. And so Gerson, they're Germans, and they're real strict about, juice it every hour, on the hour, and you drink it fresh.
Okay.
Others say, hey, you can let it sit for 3 or 4 days. This is bottled, and so it'll last maybe a week or so after you open it. You have to keep it in the refrigerator. But I have found it to be effective. We live on a farm as well, and so some days we'll have farm days, and I might get a skin infection. It'll turn red, and it might be that way for a couple days. And if I drink like a quart of carrot juice, Bolthouse Farms even, next day it comes to a head. I mean, it really does what it says it's supposed to do. It really strengthens your immune system and helps it fight infections. Mom says, well, eat your vegetables, and you do it because Mom says so, maybe not because you really think it's going to make a difference, but it actually does make a difference.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Lastly, the coffee enema. The coffee enema?
Yeah, what about it?
Warm coffee, what kind of coffee?
Again, Gerson recommends organic, fresh ground coffee, but you use what you can get. If you can't afford that, or you don't want to grind it fresh, you just mix it up. We actually have a cancer manual, and it gives you the recipes on how to make it. We actually make it 4 times stronger than you actually use. So you make it 4 times the concentration, and you can make, say, a quart, or you can make even 2 quarts at a time. Then when you want to use it, you keep it in the fridge. It'll last maybe a week or 2. you just take out 1 cup, put it in a 2-quart container, and you just fill it up, add enough water to make a quart, and it's lukewarm. Okay. You want it body temperature. And then you can put it in an enema bag and you give yourself an enema. Usually you want to hold it for 12 minutes and then just go to the bathroom and it'll come all out. And it's not for constipation. I mean, it may help constipation, but that's not, people sometimes get confused. And that's not what we're using it for. We're using it so that caffeine can be absorbed and turn the liver on. But be aware, even though you're doing a coffee enema, it can still get in to the rest of your bloodstream, and side effects of caffeine, trouble sleeping, irritability, tremoring, you get those side effects too. So, and that's why we, again, only use it if someone's toxic or likely to become toxic. So,
sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Those are good questions.
Do you have any books or pamphlets that will lay out some of the details that you've explained today? It's quite a lot of stuff to digest all at once.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
It was very interesting.
I was having trouble coordinating the slides, but
It was good.
We have. We're actually putting a video series together that'll be available online. We also have a cancer manual, which just describes what, the how-tos. It doesn't go to the research showing why it works or how it works. It just shows you this is how to do it when you get home. We give it to all our patients that come through Heartland. We give it to any patients that come through our intensive at our clinic, and they can refer to it. So if you want to write this phone number down, I can give it. It's my wife's number is 580-319-8459 or 57. I can try to email you one or
Give me that number again, please.
it's 580-319-8457. And she's kind of the office manager, and I don't know if she charges for it or if she just sends them out. I don't know.
That's a telephone.
What's that?
That's not a number to text to. That's a landline.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not a cell phone to text to. It's a landline.
You can cell phone. You can text to it.
Text to it.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
very
text.
good. That's helpful.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes I get in trouble if I give things away, so I gotta be careful.
First of all, thank you, Doctor. That was
Oh.
really, really illuminating, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow as well. My father grew up in Bolivia. Very, very poor country. He was very, very poor as a child. But one of the things he said that they did that sustained their health was they had what was called sopas or caldos. Soup?
Soup.
Stew. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me, but they can't.
Okay.
The point of it was, when I was thinking of all of the water when you cook your vegetables, if you throw that into a stew or a soup and you're consuming all of it, it's healthy because you don't lose anything in the process.
You're getting the nutrients. That's
exactly.
true.
So, and it's funny because if we go back to the history 100 years ago, in this country, the majority of the meals you've heard goulash, but were soups or stews, which consumed everything, including the water. So just thinking about that, how we kind of take some of these things out, well, that's another really healthy way to put them back in.
Yeah, and I think that has something to do with why the cancer incidence is increasing so much. You can go weeks without any whole foods. I mean, processed foods are everywhere, but it didn't used to be that way. Like your father, who grew up, you couldn't do it that way. And it's, the great controversy, I think, dietary changes in America, maybe by design. So,
one further thing. Have you heard of CHIPSA Hospital? CHIPSA
Hospital. I've heard of it.
And that was Dr. Gerson's therapies
Okay, it's in Mexico?
Yes.
Right,
in
yes.
Tijuana. My cousins own that, and you probably know Dr. Rogers.
He went there, or he...
Owned it.
Oh, he owns it.
He worked in tandem with Dr. Gerson, I guess
Wow.
the granddaughter before they died.
Yeah,
Is what
tremendous.
it was. My brother was there for a little while working as well. Very interesting, the vitamin C that you're going to talk about later.
I can. It's not in this series, but I can.
But its effect on cancer
Yes,
is profound.
Yes,
Especially
yes, it is.
IV vitamin C.
Yeah, I can just give you, briefly. Linus Pauling in 1976. He's the one that did the first study. Took 100 terminal cancer patients and give them IV vitamin C, 10 grams daily for 10 days, and then he switched them to oral vitamin C. And the 1,000 control terminal cancer patients lived 50 days. His patients lived over 300 days. And they contested it, but then he said, well, you've got younger patients, they've got less serious cancers. So he redid the numbers, did it up by specific types of cancers. And for the 8 different cancers, with patients within 5 years of each other, he showed, again, dramatic increases in survival. And since then, they have found how vitamin C works. It actually goes into the system, taken out through the cells, and when it gets in the interstitial fluid surrounding the cells, it generates hydrogen peroxide. And it's the peroxide that kills the cells, not the vitamin C. And I mean, the lecture we go through, the steps and how it works. But it's fascinating. The interesting thing is that when a white cell gobbles up a bacteria, it puts it in like a phagosome or another vacuole, and that's in the cell. Now the cell has to kill the bacteria in that cell, and so it has a lysosome, which is another vacuole full of toxic chemicals. That lysosome binds to the phagosome and releases its toxins into that vacuole, and that's what actually kills the cancer cell or the bacteria. And the chief lysosome in that vacuole is hydrogen peroxide. So we're actually using something the body actually uses itself to kill things. So, and the nice thing also about vitamin C is it does not hurt healthy cells. It doesn't kill them. So you don't have the side effects. The other evidence that it worked was tumor lysis syndrome. With standard chemotherapy, if you have a high tumor load and you give chemotherapy, say in a lymphoma, if the cancer cells die really quickly, they release their toxins in the bloodstream, and you can feel toxic from it. But if you, and so you have to guard against that. But if you get tumor lysis syndrome, you know that the cancer cells are dying. Well, in the 100 patients Linus Pauling treated, 5 or 6 of them got tumor lysis syndrome. So you know that the tumor cells were dying, otherwise you can't get tumor lysis syndrome. So anyway, good questions. Yeah, I'd like to learn more about what his experience in that hospital. Yeah, fascinating. We're kind of limited as to some of the things we can do in the States, but they don't have that down in Mexico, so it's wonderful. Other questions? Great questions.
Yeah, this has been terrific. So much information. Thank you so much, Dr. Emerson. And let's bow our heads for the closing prayer.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we praise you for this wonderful information. We praise you that you care for our health and you want us to be healthy. So please help us to understand what we can do to collaborate with you, and help us to spread the word to others who need it. We ask for traveling mercies as we go home. We ask for a good night rest, and we just ask that in your mercy we can meet here tomorrow morning. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone, and see you in the morning. We'll be starting at 10 a.m. Thank you, and have a good night.